welcome to Pseudorandom.
Hello, I'm Colin Cunningham, and welcome to Pseudorandom. Today with me is Todd Michael Bailey, electronics engineer, embedded systems wizard, and rogue mage of analog design. How are you today, Todd?
I'm doing pretty well.
Good.
Thanks for asking.
You look good.
I feel good.
You look healthy.
I feel sweaty.
All right.
I feel a little salty.
It's summertime
here
in summertime New York City, and it's a little salty and sweaty, as it should be. It's healthy. Yeah, I'm a winter guy.
I, too, am a nice person.
We could talk about the weather for an extended period of time, but...
The weather is about as analog as it gets.
This whole electronics thing is kind
yeah.
of like a huge elephant in the room, so we might as well address it. You've built a number of different things.
I have.
Why? What's so special about human technology that's taken up so much of your time? Pretty broad question.
It's broad. I'm mentally paring down my answer.
We can whittle down.
So, I started out my educational path as I studied English in school, and I was really
familiar with it.
Yeah, I was really into like Pomo fiction and whatnot, and
Pomo, quick.
Postmodern.
Right.
Right. Like I wrote a thesis
relative descriptions.
I wrote a thesis on Don DeLillo and like loved poetry and that sort of thing. And I also liked to repair things at the time. I took some classes in digital and analog circuit design at school, and just for fun. And my first job out of school was as a stereo repair technician, and like being in an unsuccessful band and that sort of thing, like living the dream. And
I've been there, gotcha.
Yeah. Haven't we all? So the thing that was exciting about electronics, right, is that there's this idea in engineering, and it's probably not true, but there's an idea that with engineering and with designing physical hardware things, you're much closer to a right and wrong. Like there's a right.
It's like clear.
It's clearer, right?
Clearer,
yeah. So like you can write a poem or something like that, and it's never right or wrong.
It's
right?
never done.
It's never done. It's never right or wrong. It'll drive you nuts. You'll stay up at night. But with engineering, you have a broken stereo. You fix that stereo. That
functionality
stereo
met.
Works.
Complete.
Like you did a thing. You know what it was. You feel good. Like, and then I think probably was an early. Like I liked lab classes, and I liked to work. I had a motorcycle. I worked on my motorcycle. Like, and there was a lot of satisfaction from doing that. And so I think if the question is why do you like hardware, that's probably that's in there somewhere. And
I think I like it for the same reasons.
Yeah.
I mean,
the objectness,
tangible balance to the abstract and all these other subjects and mediums, but the way you can meet a satisfactory goal and it clear and done.
Yeah.
And move on, and it's easy to compartmentalize things like that. And
I was also, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a wizard.
Right. And they certainly have a combination of the abstract and the tangible.
Spend a lot of time grinding spell components, you know?
Really?
Like, before you cast that invisibility spell, you have to put that eyelash in gum Arabic, right?
Right,
and
sure,
that's like,
of course.
So, like, I sort of feel like...
Dabbled in alchemy at all? Or?
My understanding is that alchemy is fairly different than wizarding, but I'm never much of an
I know, but I'm trying to bridge gaps here, you know, a little bit.
It's like high-level programming or something like that.
Right,
like,
right. I mean, I first learned about you as a person because I was on the web looking for schematics for audio stuff, synths and things like that, and I actually, I don't even remember the name of it specifically, but there was a board that you made a few kits for.
My first kit.
What was it?
It was called Who Got a Big Old Butt?
Who got a big old butt?
I sold on tour. It was band merchandise. It came in an anti-static bag. It was $20 in parts. I marked it up to $24, selling it on the road.
That's
along
a
with
very
like
thin
t-shirts.
margin.
And I was like, is it too much? Are people going to be able to afford this? It was the worst idea, but it was
and it wasn't too much longer after that I actually encountered you in the same music circles, because
totally.
my band played with the band that you knew your band and you were there at the show. I'm like, hey, that's the guy in that kid. So to winnow down again here, there was another piece of hardware that you made, sound oriented.
There was.
Where's the party at?
Where's the party at?
Where's the party at?
Yeah.
I can't. where it feels a little more natural to me to say that. You can feel free to use that if you
Yeah.
I think you're good. Anyway, it's a sampler instrument.
It is a sampler.
What was the first? What drove you to be like, hey, I want to make, of all things, like a sampler. I want to dedicate a lot of time and interest and energy and blood.
Well, the cool thing about the first Where's the Party At? Where's the Party At 1 was that Where's the Party At 1 wasn't initially a lot of blood. The first version of it was not a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. It
Right.
was like...
That's how they get you started.
That's how they get
Right.
you. Yeah, so it was a friend of mine was putting on a festival about circuit bending, and at the time I was really like, I have a problem with being like a little snotty and judgy about stuff, and at the time I was like, ugh, circuit bending.
Yeah, I know what you meant. I mean, I did a lot of reading and like blogging and stuff around the time when a lot of circuit bending stuff was really popular, and it's awesome and people are having so much fun, but at the same time, I don't know if this is what you mean, but I was kind of like, but there's more.
That was it. It was the
like get the taste and then.
It was so. Where's the Party At? The idea was, I think I was going to give a talk at the Bent Festival, and I remember being like, it was a little eye rolly about circuit bending, but then I was like, well, actually, all these people who are doing all this stuff are like, they're not getting paid, like they're undertaking it on their own to like buy these tools and do this stuff, and what would make them really dangerous is if they just like learned a little bit
Could you imagine
more
if
electronic
you guys
theory.
just, like leveled up? And
Yeah,
this would be
totally.
Totally insane.
So it was this stupid pedagogical idea I had where I was like, oh, I'm going to educate the masses, which is like also snotty and judgy, just in like a different way. But,
it's a perspective. I mean, you saw a lot of people really fetishizing, worshiping the SK1.
SK1 was what did it, right?
Sampler keyboard.
You would see like SK1s going on eBay for like $1 gazillion, and it's a
Yeah.
relatively simple instrument. It's a relatively old instrument, and I was like,
There's a lot of them out there too.
I was like, I bet I can make a circuit bendable 8-bit sampler like the SK1 that is repairable, right? Like if you bust your like sampler messing with it or trying to do some sort of circuit bend on it, you can just fix it, right?
Yeah.
Or you can get another one or whatever. They're replaceable and that's like open, that everybody can see how it works and be like, oh, if once I see the inside of a sampler, I'm now drawn to actually do all this different crazy stuff with it.
Right.
So Where's the Party At 1? The first one was just like, I think made in maybe like 2 weeks or something like that before this Bent Festival talk, and so I went and gave this talk.
Okay, so that was Where the Party At 1.
Yep.
Phil, can you pull up the PCB just so we know? So this is the one that
I have
you
one
put
in
in.
here.
Oh yeah, okay.
yeah,
We
yeah.
have the actual hardware here. You can show the PCB and then.
So this is my first. You want to put it on this thing?
Sure.
So like, this is the first. Where's the Party At?
Focus button here. Focus. There we go.
So that's the first Where's the Party At, and that may not be the first rev of the first Where's the Party At, but you can see like it's relatively simple. Everything is all through hole except for this RAM chip, because at the time I was like, oh, I can't get RAM that's not through hole, which was wrong. You can, but anyway, the first version of this came together really, really fast, and I presented it at like this, as you can see, has like no chassis.
This was like in like 2008.
Probably like 2007, 2008
Yeah.
or so. The like chassis is made out of this bent ABS that I bent on a
Right,
line bender.
appropriate,
Like,
yeah.
there's no jacks on it, right? Like all the output jacks are like everything. All the outs are like 0.1 inch spaced headers, which then get flown away back to jacks in the back, right? So which is like a
Yeah,
totally.
and that's jacks.
It has jacks, but they're
That's
not
on the
part of the
plate.
board,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like so like. You know, when people would build these, they'd be like, nothing ever works. And the problem, of course, was that they always had one of the jacks backwards, right?
Yeah.
So like that was stupid.
I was
but
just thinking like a solder came loose from a jack. That's what always happens on old stuff that's getting circuit bent and stuff.
Totally.
The jacks go.
So like anyway, the first version of that got built for Bent, and I was like,
Got built.
built.
You built
got
it. Yeah.
builded for Bent, and I went and gave this talk, and I was like, here's how sampling works, here's the idea, like here's what the fundamentals of a digital sampler, like here's why you like the way the SK1 sounds and all that stuff. So, and here's my
Pulled the
like,
curtain.
and here's my
Spoiled the magic.
my like prayer to you, unwashed masses, like, learn how sampling works, build your own SK1, it's going to be totally great.
Look, I'm like you.
You don't need to fetishize and buy a weird thing. And they're like, well, what if we just fetishize and buy your weird thing? And I was like, oh, it's not really.
Suddenly, you've become the object. You stepped into the spotlight on the podium when you were just trying to pull the curtain away from it.
I was like, well, this is worse problems to have, right? Like, yeah, sure, I'll totally try and manufacture and sell this thing. And so that was Where's the Party at 1, and I went from having the few units that I had at Bent to trying to make a run of them to sell, and did. And then some number of years later, I made another one.
Right, and so you went to Bent, and you gave talks on. Did you tell people and instruct them how to use it? Was this, or were you just selling? Was it just as a vendor?
No, I mean, you have to support that sort of thing, right? So if you throw these things out into the world, like the chances of them actually making it.
So when you said you were talking to people, it was actually like giving, like, hey, I'm like standing up. I mean, because I'm a Bent, and when I go there, I'm like, I was having conversations with individual people. But it was like a lecture, if you will.
It was a lecture such as it was.
Right.
Yeah. And then that was in New York, and I lived in Chicago at the time.
Right.
And went back to Chicago and designed more. I think that's from one of the Bent festivals for sure.
Right. Was that the one where we hung out in the rooftop after? In the Joker and anyway, sorry. I'm like just gonna.
No, that was a different one.
That was like 2 years later.
Yeah.
Anyway, so but you kept on making it. You kept like revising it, doing iterations, and this is all the while. You've got gigs. You've got jobs that you pay your rent with, and consultation and like constantly all this stuff.
I had this idea that I was like, I'm gonna live the dream. I designed this kit, right? Perhaps this thing can pay my rent. And Where's the Party at 1?
Okay, you want it? I'll give it to you. Let's go full on. See, like it's a big deal to keep iterating on the same thing to me. I mean, like, because this is your free time, and this is when you can go explore. I mean, you're doing a service for people by still developing it. To me, I'm like, I could be like moving on and.
Right. I could be getting really good at Overwatch.
But yeah, that's a little early days for that. We can talk about this some other time. But so you kept building on this, and I guess actually that's fun. Even in a video game where you're building up and you're leveling up on this one.
Where's the Party at 1's an enormous level. Like it's like, Where's the Party at 1 was such a good learning experience, but it was not always fun, right? Like it was a cool sampler. It did a lot of stuff. It did a lot more than the SK1 did, and at the time, at that point, like the whole modular thing wasn't around yet. Right, and not everybody had some box and a acrylic enclosure that stuck together. Right. So I feel like Where's the Party was maybe a rarer thing or a stranger thing back then.
What was the most fun part of?
The fun part is the same for all of these, right? It's like making it the first time, right? That's always sort of the most fun part, and it is
the initial core functionality popping up and smile coming on your face and
right, and like winging it. Like I remember. Joe Kramer, when I was first built these, like I had one, and we were at this buddy of mine who plays guitar, buddy of ours that plays guitar, we were at a mutual friend's house, and I had this thing, and he was like, "Can I play with it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I remember him playing with it and being like, "Well, like." I was like, "Well, what do you think? What do you think it should do?" Like, and he was like, "Oh, and a lot of like loop pedals that I use, like there's a backwards feature," and I was like, "I can do that." Like, and it's cool to like go in and like. It was a relatively easy thing to code. So
if I had to choose one test user, it would probably be Joe Kramer.
Yeah.
My favorite one.
Yeah. It's fun to do that. Like, it's fun to iterate, and it's fun to improve, and it's fun to design. It's not fun to ship.
It's not fun to kit necessarily.
It's really not fun to kit. And I look at some of the stuff that I did, and I was like, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe that I sat there that long, like stuffing very tiny things in bags for that many days. Like, and
it's an amazing accomplishment, really. People think it's a simple thing, but it's a great thing to be able to get done and to have the mental fortitude to move through. I mean, so you kept adding features. Now, you, like, when I was reading some of the notes about it, like on your blog, you wrote a file system
So that's Where's the Party at 2.
I mean, is this?
Where's the Party at 1?
There's fun, and then there's masochism almost. I mean,
But that's the fun part. Like the accomplishing things, like feeling like you're accomplishing things that not that many other people can do.
Okay, maybe we'll say there's fun, which is masochism in a way. I mean,
Yeah.
it was what triggered you to do that? To be like, you know what, fat, screw it. Like these aren't.
Well, fan files is really complicated, actually. Like
and I figure I haven't dug in myself, but that's why I'm kind of thinking.
So yeah, so
it's a major undertaking.
For Where's the Party at 2, so one of the Where's the Party at 1 had no permanent storage. It stored everything in RAM, so when you turn it off, you lost your samples. And it was a common feature request to have permanent memory.
Of course.
And so Where's the Party at 2 does have permanent. Well, Where's the Party at 2 supports a micro SD card. And early on, I was like, I also, like, again, like, along sort of with being a snob, I was like, I don't use other people's libraries. Like, if there's a fat file system handler, I'm going to write it. Like, that's
You're going to be responsible for its sucky parts.
Yeah, I'm going to be responsible for its sucky and also great parts, which is stupid. Like, that was like, it's an arrogant attitude. And
well, it has its benefits, but
it has its benefits for sure. I mean, you learn a lot about file systems, but is it like is a file system sexy? Like, no.
It all depends.
It's not really.
With everything around perspective.
So,
I mean, I remember talking to you about a little kit that I made, and I was talking about this little edge case bug that it had. That if you did this certain thing, then it could, explode. Not literally, but it could crash. And I'm like, but nobody has ever said anything, and they haven't encountered it. And you're like, somebody did, but they didn't say anything. In fact, probably a bunch of people did, but they don't say anything. Because people they're like, it doesn't work, and then they walk away, and they don't post in your forums or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I know you're not just going to like button it up and go, oh, it looks like it works, and move it on. So that's why I'm thinking like, it's a big deal to make a file system to those standards, like rigorous standards.
Yeah.
All this.
And I mean, so what the deal is with these micro SD cards, like micro SD cards are block devices. They think in terms of 512 byte. Well, old ones thought in terms of 512 byte blocks. And the deal with FAT is first of all, so like these samplers the samples are relatively small. Like it's an 8-bit sampler, it's mono, so the files are not big by like today's like audio file standards. So that was one thing to take into account, and the other one was like you have to, the processor on both of these is like a 20 megahertz Atmel processor, right? It doesn't deal with 32-bit numbers particularly quickly. Like it has to it doesn't have SD card handling hardware on it, so you can't like tell it to inhale a block and then go away and do something else in code. So so I wanted the file system to be relatively simple. And it is, right? It's the first page, the first 512 bytes are the lengths of the samples in I think there's like 128 possible samples on a Where's the Party at micro SD card, all of which have been allocated the entire size of the RAM. So you can fit the entirety of the RAM in any given sample. And those cards are 1 gig or 2 gig, and they cost like $1 or something like that. So being like, you can only get 128 samples on a card. First of all, I'm not sure anyone in the entire world has ever put 128 samples on a Where's the Party at card. Yeah. And then so there's basically like a table of contents on the first block on the micro SD card, and then the rest of the blocks are just like straight allocated. So it's just like a raw sample starting at byte 0 and going on.
So it's all really simple. Never mind. Yeah.
It's fairly simple. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I guess I never did it myself, so.
Well, the cool thing about that, right, is that there's no jumping around. Like in FAT, you have to jump around to different indices and like to support FAT and all file names. It's actually a fairly large, clunky piece of code. And this is much simpler. Now, the deal is that's super annoying is that no one can actually drag and drop files onto the Where's the Party at. So I made it's like one of those really hard-headed things you do, right? So I was like, but I wrote a tool in C to pack and unpack samples for Where's the Party at, and people are like, the what now? And you're like, it's a C program. You guys, come on, you just have to run it. And they're like, I can't run it. And
wait, is this a command line thing?
Yeah. And I was like, none of you guys don't all have a Linux box. Like, Jesus, what's so
they don't.
No, they don't.
So you kept this iterate. What was the first version? Are we jumping ahead too much to look at? Because you've got a bunch of. I'm looking at like a stack of these. Of different iterations.
So the one over here is a complete Where's the Party at one, and then in this box there are I think these are all the Where's the Party At versions that I saved. So like, where do I start? So like, this is a board from the very first Where's the Party At.
All right, put it under the cameras.
All right. That's a Where's the Party At, and like at this point, I don't fully remember all these versions and why they are what they are, but like that's a Where's the Party At 1, and then I was like, oh wait, what's this one? This is a 1.01. What does that even mean? What's it say on this one?
It means it doesn't have Biggie on it.
I took Biggie off?
Yeah, I don't see Biggie Smalls featured on that board.
Biggie's on this one?
Yeah, Biggie's on this one.
Aquarius. Oh, you know what happened with these? I think I had a problem. I was in a hurry to get these out.
With bitmaps and Eagle, or?
No, I was in a hurry to get them out, and I had, like, there's a trace that was, like, routed badly. Like, there was a lot of clock noise, and I remember being like, all right, well, I've got like 300 of these printed circuit boards, which seemed like a lot at the time, and I can either make all the kit users cut a trace and add a jumper, or I can reorder 300 printed circuit boards. So I did, and that's, I think, probably what all these are. And then I had 300 coasters, which is my first big coaster experience.
Yep, make a coffee table out of it.
And then this is all sort of like...
This one has a big prototyping area on it.
Yeah, so this one, I feel like must have been...
earlier.
Yeah, it must have been. This must have been earlier. So this was, as you can see, like the button layout is different. There's only 4 of them. Like the knobs are different. It has a totally different layout. I put feet on the bottom. So I guess this might have been the one that was for the lecture, maybe. And this prototyping area, I was like, I don't know, something might like, I might need to add something else on it. And you can see like utter lack of ground plane on that. I'm sure it sounded terrible.
Yeah, that's another whole thing. Is you're dealing with audio electronics that, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So like that was like
digital next to it.
This is a version 0.9. There's probably like a 0.95 in here somewhere.
This one you've got added on a couple of proto boards.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. So this is a 0.95, right? So that's like there's no solder mask on that one. There's like all manner of crap hanging off of it.
Yeah, I'm a noted solder mask fan. I think the aesthetic is pretty strong.
But you can see I moved to the different RAM chip. This RAM chip was one of the biggest problems. So the last one that was up there, this guy, that's the RAM on it, and that RAM is super fast, which is totally not necessary for an audio sampler, and it's incredibly power hungry. So I was like, oh, we use a different RAM chip, and I used the surface mount chip, which ended up being the bane of pretty much all Where's the Party At 1 users' existences, because it's surface mount, and it's an SOJ, which is actually sort of an annoying package to solder. So once I realized that this wasn't a good idea, I was like, oh, I'll sell them with pre-soldered, and that was when I learned an important lesson, which is if you like part of Where's the Party At 1 was also like being like, this is an affordable learning tool for the masses, so I didn't mark it up that much, and I was like, I'm gonna tack on $10 if I have to solder on these chips for you.
Yeah, please.
And you know how like you do an option like that, and what you realize is that people don't care if it's like there's like a weird thing about kit builders.
They care if it's unsoldered.
Where you're like, you, as the person who's designing it, have to appreciate and understand how much work the person who's buying it wants to put into it, right? Like, is a kit builder someone who just takes a made thing and they put it in a box and then that's it? That's the kit? Or is the kit, or is it about, like, you want to do, like, you just want a printed circuit board, you want to get everything from DigiKey, like, you want access to the source code, like, what do different people want? What I found is that most of the people who were buying stuff like this wanted that chip soldered on. They were like, I don't want to deal with the headache of, like,
I mean, they want a sense of accomplishment and a sense of having a hand in it, and maybe put their own personal spin on it where they can.
Right.
Usually that's with the enclosure.
There's been beautiful chassis for Where's the Party At.
No doubt. Yeah. Oh yeah, I saw some awesome like front panels and stuff made for it. But I mean, this board is made. This is like all through hole parts, except I mean on these iterations with the surface mount. That's wild to me for something this complex. Was that like really hard? Were you going against over and over again? I would think you'd just be like, could make this easy with surface mount. I could start here.
There's so many fundamental differences between this design and the way that it would be if I was just designing it for me.
I mean,
right, you know, you're limited. The microcontroller, you have to buy a through-hole microcontroller, right? The biggest through-hole microcontroller that there was like, at the time I used an Atmel AVR because they were very popular and because people had. So another thing about Where's the Party at 1 is that I was like, oh, people are going to reprogram it with an ISP header, right? Here, if I can offer one piece of advice to anyone who is interested in making kits, the single most important thing that you must put on your kit if it contains a microcontroller is a bootloader. You must put a bootloader on it. This is not a lesson I learned until Where's the Party at 2, and it made my life terrible. Write a good bootloader or steal it from somewhere and use a bootloader.
A lot of people were bricking their stuff.
No, they weren't bricking it, but like
to their own perspective.
They're like, I would like be like, hey, I added a new feature, and everybody would be like, nah, it doesn't have that feature. And it got to the point where I would send people new microcontrollers, and that was like another thing where I was like, all right, well, I guess it's $10 for a new microcontroller.
Yeah.
Like the hex files online, just get a programmer and put it on your Where's the Party at? Like it's all freely available, and people would be like, I would rather pay you $10 and wait for you to walk to the post office, and it was terrible. Like I wasn't making any money. I did not enjoy burning, you know, Atmel AVR ships by the dozens and like sending them out and like going to the post office to do it. It was like, it wasn't a good solution. Right. So yeah, bootloader. Anyway, so yeah, so it's a 40-pin chip, and you know, an SMT, and so there's all these latches on here, right? So those latches are for driving the LEDs and for accessing the RAM, and they're part of the R2R DAC that's on this, and they basically are just expanding the number of IOs that processor has, right? So if you just had more IOs on the processor, it would be more efficient, it would be less noisy, and you wouldn't need as many parts. Like, everything would be better about it. But you would need a surface mount chip,
right?
Which I'm okay with, but I at the time I perceived that probably the people building it would not want one, and I think that was probably the case.
Right. Well, limitations can be good. Completely blank canvas can be really horribly intimidating.
Yeah.
Even when you're just making concrete functionality, I suppose.
Totally.
Maybe not, but we'll say that for the sake of comfort.
So yeah, so this one, like, I'm pretty sure this is another processor. I was like, oh, put two processors on it. Also crazy pants. Terrible idea. So like,
what is the second processor hanging out doing?
I don't remember everything that it was doing. It might have replaced a latch, and I think it replaced a latch, and it handled like dimming LEDs and doing other sort of like timing intensive stuff, so I could deal with samples on the other. I think it also took in the A to D. It was the A to D converter for the potentiometer, so you didn't have to, like on Where's the Party at 1, you couldn't adjust a parameter while you were sampling because you would have to flip the A to D converter from your sampler, from like your audio stream back over to the potentiometer, right? Okay. So I was like, I'll solve that by like putting another processor on the board. Wrong solution, right? So this one never made it into real life, but I was also, you were like, well, no, there's all this extra processing power on here. One thing I wanted to do with Where's the Party at? Once I was like, it's a pedagogical tool, but now it's like a fun thing for me. Like now I have to make it fun for me. Was like,
that'd be nice.
I was into the MPC 2000, which is a sampler that probably a lot of people were into. And MPC 2000, I believe it's 10-bit sampler, and it's like, people like the way it sounds because it sounds just a little crusty, right? And there are a lot of ways that samples can be made to sound crusty. And I aimed with Where's the Party at to be able to introduce crustiness,
right?
Like as a choice, as a user's choice, right?
Sought after feature.
So like, there's only a finite number of ways that you can screw up a digital sample, right? So I mean, I guess probably not true. There's probably an infinite number of ways.
This is a fine, flaky crust too, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, this is your phyllo dough of 8-bit samplers. Anyway, one of the error sources that I was way into was clock jitter. And clock jitter is a little intensive. It was processor intensive to generate in the interrupt service routine in Where's the Party at 1, and then I was like, oh, I've got this whole other processor hanging
It's
out.
expensive to
Basically,
mess up on purpose. Yeah.
yeah, it can be. Some things are easy. It's easy to reduce bit depth. It's
Right.
harder to screw with the clock.
Right. Yeah.
Especially because these had oscillators on them, so you had to screw with the clock, but you had to still listen to the oscillator. Anyway, so this was a linear feedback shift register with basically like a white noise generator that handled doing clock jitter as well. I don't know. It was fun. I probably learned a lot doing it. It was ultimately a crazy design and not a good one. And now I was like, now not only do you have one processor that nobody can program and you have to send out chips for, you now have two.
Right.
So
yeah.
So whatever. This was like, it was cool. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad it
Lessons
never made
assimilated.
it. I'm glad it never made it out into the world. That might be it for Where's the Party at ones I have in here.
Okay.
Is that right? Is that a one?
So.
I think you already saw this one. This is a Where's the Party at one. This has like a little cut there.
It shows the traces on the back too.
Yeah, sure. Oh, that's not perfect. Oh, okay. So you can see on this one that I'm starting to like
We're not
learn.
looking for perfect. There's no grades here.
There's a. It's easier to see all the hip hop jokes on this because there's no solder mask. You can see I'm starting to experiment with like breaking up ground planes here.
Right.
That worked okay. Where's the Party at one was kind of noisy. But yeah, so I think this is pretty close to what the final one was, I'm guessing. It looks like the final one. So that's it for Where's the Party at one prototypes.
So you moved on. You built Where's the Party at 2. What's the major difference between 1 and 2?
There are a bunch of differences, and I don't know. It's like I can be like there are many differences, or there basically aren't any. It's kind of the same thing, and they would sort of both be true, right? So like a layperson, yeah, great. So those are pictures of the different layouts. So that looks like Where's Party at 2.
It looks a lot more complex. Yeah.
Where's Party at 2 is bigger.
You've got the SD card functionality.
Yeah, so
is in 2.
So part of it was I felt, and this is also like if there was another lesson that I've learned from this, lesson 1 being always bootloader. Lesson 2 would be know when it's done. Know when your project is done.
Right. So once you start moving up to like a level like this, all this complexity, and you don't have a defined goal functionality to say, this is done. Now this is becoming a poem. It's becoming a painting, and it's
it's like you can't get away, right?
Yeah.
So now when you're done, I had guilt about Where's the Party at 1. I was like, Where's the Party at 1 was a cool instrument, but there was a lot that I would have done differently. Like so many iterations I did on that thing, and like, people. I think I unloaded about like a couple hundred Where's the Party at ones, right? And like there were problems that came up repeatedly for Where's the Party at ones sometimes, and I was like, if I had to do all over again, I could totally fix those. A, B, there's like it could have been smarter as a product too. Like there are all these things that people want, and I could have provided them, and I could have like sold them as different SKUs.
There's
and,
ideals all over the place.
Right. So you're like,
Hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah, it was like it doesn't have to be expensive, but it can be like if you want to buy all the goodies, like it can be expensive. But if you just want the simple kit, it actually doesn't cost that much more than Where's Party 1. It's much better. And so, Where's Party 2 is still a sampler, right? It's still a sampler. It still samples at 8 bits, but it adds features.
You want to put that under the camera there?
Sure, this one.
Just while you're talking about it.
Yeah. So that is a stock standard Where's the Party at 2. Like if you buy one on the website now, this is what you'll get.
Right.
But
this a sweet little plastic enclosure.
Thank you. That was also a deeply hard-headed thing that I did. So this enclosure, it's common now with laser cut acrylic enclosures to make those fingers and press edges together so everything. Yeah, right.
But you tapped.
I don't like that look, right? I think that aesthetic looks
it's an aesthetic,
looks unclean. So So for all the Where's the Party At 2s, right, you can see these are put together with screws into the chassis, and what that means is that all the edge panels, like, I don't know, it's probably going to be too close.
Flush.
Yeah, the edge panels are flush, and you can see that they've all been. You think that'll focus? Probably doesn't matter, right?
Sure. We just have this. Actually, I'm not sure if it's close enough. Put the rightmost button there.
This
Oh,
button.
no,
Good enough,
no.
right?
Yeah, for a second.
So anyway, you can see that those are tapped, which meant that I had to build a tapping jig to do that, right? And either my assistant or I went through and drilled and tapped all of those, all of the sides of all of the enclosures. Now, it ends up looking the way I want it to.
A lot of
right?
love.
But
Yep.
it's a lot of plastic bits on your floor, and there's fallout
Right.
from, like, you know, you don't, like, you're sitting there tapping a million things over
You're
and over
a third of
again.
the way through, you're thinking, I need this. I need this. Why am I? Because you have to refuel yourself on the drive. I mean, I've been there with
Yeah.
probably smaller endeavors. It's, yeah.
So
And if
it's
you
like-
don't stop and go screw it, then it's definitely worth it. Then it
Yeah.
must be worth it, yeah.
But it's like, so like, you know, a common thing that people wanted for Where's the Party At 1 was an enclosure. So I was like, I'll design an enclosure, that'll be fun. I'll get a laser cut, that was relatively easy, like it was fairly painless. And then there's like that thing where you totally shoot yourself. And like the hardware on this enclosure is relatively expensive. There's a lot of aluminum there. So the enclosure itself is not that cheap, which means it's not that popular. Like probably only 50% of the people who buy a Where's the Party At also buy an enclosure, which is fine. Like,
But it's gonna go in style if it's gonna go. If you're gonna do it, you're doing it.
yeah, I think it's like this. Like gets back to like the sort of deep-seated snottiness that I feel like I have, where I'm like, it's gonna look right. If it's gonna go, it's gonna look right.
Right. I mean, I understand. You're giving us a glimpse in, and I'm identifying probably more than you could possibly imagine with this, and the guilt and the identification with others. But from the outside, it's golden. This is all like
Yeah.
the what you see as snootiness or whatever.
Yeah.
These are all the end result is great. It's like really
Right.
enjoyable and a piece of ART.
Yeah.
It worked. The thing that I remember, what was actually Pete Edwards told me a couple times. He's like, you spend all this time building synths and stuff like this,
Yep.
and it's so much fun, and it's super satisfying, and you get lost in it. You have to remember to play them.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
we've talking about this thing so much. Can we actually hear what it sounds like?
Oh sure. So that's the green guy here.
I didn't mean to interrupt your flow.
That's okay. Just to finish
That's okay.
your-
You totally did, but
yeah, whatever. That's why I'm here, right? So, like, you asked what was different about Where's the Party At 2.
I did.
Yeah. So Where's the Party At 2? Before, it'll make sense it'll make more sense when I play it.
No, I got you.
All right. So,
I thought you defined it.
let me put this back up here actually. So Where's the Party At 2 has a couple different things. So like, remember there was that problem where I was like, oh, you have to flip the ADC over when you're trying to read the
Right, okay.
parameter controlled knob, right? So then you make it an encoder, right? That's the right solution, not putting an extra microcontroller on the board.
Right.
Or that is a good solution, right? It also, there was this problem with Where's the Party At 1, right? Where you'd send it a MIDI command, right? It would change a parameter, but then the knob the potentiometer is still in the same place as it was before.
Right.
So like,
Yeah.
how do you mitigate
Butter
that,
and
right?
cook.
So what it would mean is, you could call it a feature, I guess, where like say you'd send it a MIDI command, which was like, go to 90%, but the knob was at 10%, right? So it would jump to 90%, right? And then next time you touched the knob,
would just
it would
readjust.
it was jump back to where it was, which
But that's pretty intuitive too.
it was intuitive, but it was like you couldn't smoothly move. You couldn't like set something with MIDI and then tweak it there. Like you sort of had to.
This is made of atoms. It has limitations. There's got to be some things it's not going to be able to magically
the solution was to like
fabricate or-
get an encoder, right? Like pretty easy solution, right? So
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, it's got little things like that. The big things that I was jazzed about were it's CV controlled right now. Like there's not that many at the time. I don't think there were any CV controlled samplers. I think there's probably a ton of them now. But so the clock oscillator is now a VCO. So you can set it a control voltage and control your samples that way. It's a better sounding sampler than Where's the Party At 1 in general. It has a RAM chip, which is totally easy to use. There's a bunch more features in the interrupt service machine. It's faster than Where's the Party At 1. It can screw up your samples in much more ways.
Excellent.
And it's got a bootloader. And it, I think probably the most popular request, right, was this
The jack breakout or the?
The jack breakout was popular, but there's a micro SD card slot in that,
right, yeah.
Which was much requested. And so this thing has the Where's the Party At file system, and will totally like let you store samples. It's CV controlled, it's MIDI controlled. It introduces all manner of crustiness, and it's easy to it's playable. I don't know if I was going to say it's easy to play with your fingers, but it's totally playable with your fingers. That's like another like designy sort of thing, right? Where Where's the Party At reads out in here. I'll move the other one up there now. Oops. Let's see if that works. So Where's the Party At? If you're changing like a parameter or something like that, you can see. I think probably. That's where our little heads are. Like, I don't know if you can see those LEDs change. I guess you can.
Focus. Yes.
There we go. So you can see those LEDs change on the board, right? Now, all of you nerds out there will know, right, that's counting in binary, right? Mm-hmm. Like your parameters are going. I think there's 256 levels of most. It depends on the function that you're changing. There's usually 256 levels, but you show it in 8 steps there. But the take-home message of all of this, right, is that you can adjust a parameter, and in fact, there is like user feedback for it, but it's counting in binary, right? Mm-hmm. Like, how many musicians out there are like, yes, I'm going to learn to count in binary to play your bizarre. Well, that was my attitude at the time too. You can learn. That's what it's for. It's for you to learn. But people hate
if
that.
You're trying to mass market this thing, yeah, I'd say maybe that's a little bit of a high cost of entry, but you're not trying to avoid the niche here.
Yeah, clearly not, right?
Yeah.
But it's like you don't even know that you're trying to avoid, like, it wasn't even that much
You're making something
ahead.
With style.
I was trying to make a thing with style, but it's like whose style? Like it's like
your style.
I made a thing for me and then tried to sell like a zillion of them. Right?
Don't worry if it's art. It's art. Don't worry. It's fine. It doesn't matter. That's for other people to decide.
That's kind of you. So anyway, that's why I was like about the user interface. Like the user interface on Party 2 is actually kind of a lot better than 1. Like there are the button, like the bizarre button combinations that you have to use are
modifiers.
Yeah, are totally easier to use than the last one, and it does more stuff. So I don't know why I went off on that long tangent about encoders and
because it's the thing, it was a big feature and branch of the path this whole journey had taken you.
I guess the sort of take-home message of this is I still think that there are probably not that many samplers in the world which can do what a Where's the Party At can do. However, it's so weird that it's like most of the time the users use it exactly the same way, right? Like,
yes.
Which is fine. It's like the one thing, like it's one trick pony thing. I'll show you. All right, so you were like, "Can we play it?"
I want to make some noise.
So let's make some noise. So I'm gonna show you like the most this is what gets people in the door with the Where's the Party At, right? And it's
put us in the door.
It's relatively simple. So jams go into the Where's the Party At. So the controls on the back of a Where's the Party At are audio in and out, MIDI in and out, and CV and clock select, which is like a different thing. Huh. So this is also like Where's the Party can also clock. You can sample multiple samples. It's multi-timbral and multi-bank. So you can clock your 2 banks differently, work together. So there's bank selection stuff for like what you want to do with your various different clocks. Like I remember like they're not. I'm pretty sure there are looper pedals that do this, but I was like, if you have multiple loops, you should be able to clock them differently, right? Yep. You should be able to make. You should be able to make clapping music anytime you want.
I think plenty of people are satisfied without that functionality, but obviously it is a requirement as you see it, and it would be welcome.
Anyway, yeah. So the signal path is audio goes in, audio comes back out.
And right now, there's no CV controlling anything, but there is this big, giant MIDI keyboard here. So, Where's Party At does... so this is like how to basically... This is a basic catching a loop, right? So...
You can hear that, Phil?
So that loop's caught now. It's not perfect. I kind of messed it up. But like the simplest thing, the thing that 90% of Where's the Party At users do when they first get it, it's like...
And they should.
Yeah.
There's good reason for that.
And actually, it's maybe one of my favorite features to do. Like...
No reason to look down on that.
I'm not looking down on it. I'm like, it does one thing and it sounds pretty cool when it does it, right? Like, maybe it doesn't need clock jitter. Maybe that was all me, right? So yeah, so it's basically like...
You put an effect off at the end of that, and please, you've got a whole world. Your palette is filled right there.
Yeah. Let me see if I can remember what all the commands are for everything, but...
So now it's playing reverse, and you change the length.
Yeah.
And now you put it in the dishwasher.
Yeah. That's a bit reduction. So
that's just okay.
So that's reducing this to a 1-bit sample. So I think that's backwards 1-bit sample.
Hardwire.
The Apex Twin thing.
And then drop it on.
So. Alright, so that's that's your OMD right there. So.
Goal! Yeah.
Goal, right.
And I that's fun in a bun right there.
Yeah,
obviously. Target market. Yeah. Got it, I'm sold.
So that's it's like your noise band kit right there.
Right.
At an affordable price.
Right.
Runs out of 9 volt.
It runs at a 9 volt. Come on, kids. But to bring it full circle, in the SK1, you have the MIDI input.
Right. So now you can like. So that's also your OMD sample, right?
And it's it's a MIDI keyboard, right? So we can turn the arpeggiator on.
Right.
I'll be back later.
Yeah. So that's like. Oh, thanks. Thank you.
It's a modern human. It's a necessary thing to do, I think.
Yep. So that's what it sounds like. Its primary goal was to take.
I mean, that's just obviously that's what it sounds like with one sample that you just grabbed off of your phone, right?
Yep. Yeah. It's cool. Like like I said, there's multiple banks. You can play power chords with Where's Party At, which is I think right now this thing's configured to.
You can play power chords.
You can play a power chord.
Oh, of course. No, I don't know what you mean, but I believe you.
You don't know what a power chord is?
I know what a power chord is. Not really sure how to apply to like a sampler, but
So this is on a separate bank. I think this is probably set up to be like. So that's. So that's like multiple banks and where's the party at. You could set the same sample to each bank, or if you're like sampling like a flute or like not a song or something like that, you can make a multi-timbral instrument that way.
You did it, Todd. It works.
Yeah, it works.
I know this. You know, this is an older project for you. And
yeah, it's actually really fun to
a
break it out and talk to
down
someone.
memory
Like I
lane.
mostly spend most of my time kicking myself about what a terrible idea it was.
No, you need to fill in the gaps there with the good thing, which is the accomplishment.
It's fun to play.
No, it's awesome. You should be seriously proud, and I'm not just saying that because we're doing an interview on the internet. It's super fun, and I'm probably going to do this a whole lot more.
I think all the parameter sliders are set up too to like. So anyway, that's all like. That was a way that I found it was easier to control where's the party at. Like where's the party at has this like binary interface that you can totally do all this stuff with your fingers. But if you have a MIDI setup, like like mapping everything to a keyboard, you can fly a lot faster.
Much better than my SK1 or even my SK5.
What? Thank you.
Well, thank you for bringing it here and
my pleasure.
And bringing the memories.
Yeah.
And the adventures.
So bootloader. What was the second one? Second one was know when it's done, and I guess Colin's third point was don't beat yourself up too bad.
It's true. You know, I need to practice what I preach to because I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. Thanks for coming here and talking.
Oh, my pleasure.
About this.
Yeah, I had a great time.
This is fun. I did too, which is good. It'd be really awkward if I'm like,
You're like,
it wasn't that great.
This was lame.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for
Thank you.
watching.